Sometimes beauty is close by. Just around the corner of our house, almost in our garden, is Mount Arrowsmith. And look how beautiful the sun shines on the snow. What a great topic for our next painting. So let's create a masterpiece. Hello and welcome in the studio. I already made a sketch in grey tones of Mount Arrowsmith. Our guest today is Barend Cornelis Koekoek for the second time in our show because he was one of the few Dutch masters who ever painted mountains, and that's special because in Holland we only have mud and water. Let's climb Mount Arrowsmith with a brush and work. The Dutch masters always created a nice horizon glow with yellow ochre and Lyson crimson and titanium white. Right above that we can mix some Taylor blue, a tiny touch of cadmium yellow light and titanium white. Above those layers I want it a bit more dark, with dark grey. For this painting we need lots of grey. The best what you can do is mix three tones like dark, middle and light. For a painter, the worst what can happen is running out of paint. So make a good stock, and if you have too much, put it in a box and store it away in the fridge. Above this mountain massif we see often a dance party of clouds. Let's do that right away. With a velvet brush and a highlight color of cadmium yellow light and titanium white, we start pushing the paint into the wet underlayer. With no pressure on the bristles, we fade it out at the lower side of the cloud. And then, with a bit of grey, we can give the cloud some backing or even a more grim effect. It's always nice to give a painting like this a certain threatening, makes it more exciting for the viewer. I love mountains, but for this region, this range is very important. It has an impressive name, the Mount Arrowsmith UNESCO Biosphere Region. Splendid. The native people called it Kult Kachult. I hope I pronounced it well. It means jagged face. And that is in the Coast Salish language, of course. And if you take a good look, yes, it could be a giant with indeed a jagged face. I think it's an excellent name for it. It is always funny to give mountains and rocks crazy names like the Three Sisters, the Grand Tetons and much more all over North America. Once on a holiday in the USA, in Monument Valley, I became friends with a Navajo guide, and I asked him why the natives gave the rocks all those fancy names. He smiled at me and he said, "Michael, we do that just for the tourists. And we just call them rock." And he burst out laughing. Yes, the Navajos, they have a strong humor. They could almost be Dutch. We just finished a nice winter snow-filled cloudy sky. And now it's time for some rocky stuff. Let's paint the outlines first. That is easy with a middle tone grey and a round brush. The palette stick is always a great help to keep your hand steady. You have to get used to it. First you will hate it and then you will love it, like all my darling students. After this we can start filling the mountain. Always paint in the direction of the mountain surface. Otherwise your brush stroke does look a little bit awkward. Did you know that a painting expert can recognize a painter on his brushstroke? That's how they discovered sometimes old Dutch masters, just recognizing their brushstroke. How interesting is that? As soon as we are ready with filling up all the ground layers, we slightly can start with bringing in a bit of light curves. The light comes from the left, so the shadow is left and the light is on the right. Just use a bit of light gray to start with. This will make the mountain more 3D. With a small filbert brush, we move the light paint into the dark side. The mountain looks a bit very dark, but I promise you it will get better. Just be patient and work in layers. It might be wise to let your artwork dry in between if it gets too muddy. Of course, you will understand that we don't have time to stop it, because we have to continue the show. But I do my best not to drown into the wet underlayer. Of course, the lower part has to be covered too. Just paint a thin layer of light gray over the canvas. Let's try to paint the snow. With a small filbert brush, we start at the light side of the famous bump. Just bring it in slowly and pay attention to paint it in a good direction. That is really important. On the shadow side, you want it a bit darker. Just add a bit of gray and some more phthalo blue. Not too heavy yet. First, get your feet wet, as they say in Canada. In this case, we make the mountain wet, of course. On the left side of the bump, we can paint some shadow snow with a darker tone. Same story. Sometimes you have to get the hang of it and search for the right pressure, like me here in this part. I'm still looking for the right touch. Now let's take a look at the work of Barend Koekoek, a great Dutch master who painted mountains. This painting shows that Barend used the same ochre and alizarin crimson tones like we did to create that fantastic glow above the horizon. In our case, above the mountains, of course. Above that, you see that soft tones of phthalo blue, wonderful. He painted the clouds with soft middle tones of gray, just like we did. And on the snow, you see also the same reflections of highlight and some phthalo blue with some gray. Just like we did. Isn't that fantastic? And here is our mountain again. Slowly we get the hang of it and now we are moving forward. The whole part is in the shadow, so we keep it dark. On the top of the ridges we can paint some light snow. And suddenly there is that wonderful effect, making your mountain alive. Beautiful. Moving forward, we will bring in some more light on the right side. Of course, the sun is catching those ridges, so go forward. It's up to you, of course, how much you want to do. I always tell my students, you are the Canadians here. You know how the rock works, right? I'm only the mud boy from Holland. I never painted mountains, but it's so funny. I love it. Of course, you have noticed sometimes we skip a little part just to gain some time. Also, we have to speed up a bit as we have only 28 minutes for this show. But I think you can follow my moves. Later, all these episodes will be loaded on YouTube, and with the digital button on the right side of your screen, below your screen that is, you can slow the speed down. How easy is that? With a small filbert brush we can paint some more snow. And then I will show you a very neat trick with a knife. But that comes later. First of all, we splash a little bit of light snow on the outer edges. And here it is, the trick with a knife. First I flat down the light highlight color, and then with a little roll on the side of my knife, I put it into the wet paint, setting up the light on the edges. What a great effect. Very important, almost no pressure on the knife. Maybe it's a good idea to practice on a piece of oil paper before you step into the real world. It's always good to do some practicing. Then, after all the highlights, with a bit of blue and gray, we can go again into the dark side of the mountain and strike some shadows into it. And again, almost no pressure. Very light touch. And suddenly the edges will look more natural and rough. The technique is the same as the highlight. First, put the paint flat with your knife. Then, with a little roll of paint on the knife, we will strike softly over the mountain ridges downwards. Just follow the direction of the mountain. Easy. Of course, on the foreground, we can do exactly the same technique. With a light touch, bring up some tailor blue with dark gray. And with a darker tone, it is easy to create some new edges. On the top of the mountain, we can paint some pre-highlights with phthalo blue. Afterwards, we will do the real highlights. With a foam brush, we can create some misty background for the forest. With a light gray, I push the bristles forward into the wet underlayer. Just keep on pushing, and the second step is a bit darker tone of gray. We are not really painting trees. Yes, it's all far away suggestion of a forest. Be aware of that. Sometimes you have to be a bit patient with creating backgrounds like this. Build up the grays first and slowly move in with some greens. Not too green, but just a bit. And still we don't paint the real trees. On the other side of the canvas we can do the same technique, of course. And slowly a forest rolls out of the brush. How fantastic is that? It's up to you how dense you want to make it. With the snow color we can paint some snow-covered tree groups. Not too much, but just here and there. And on the foreground we can use the same color. With a bit of gray we can create mud banks and so on. And that makes it a bit more interesting. After all, it's not your manicured garden, it's wilderness. The foreground is something special. I found that field a bit boring, so I decided to add some decorations. First, we can paint some snow color and edges, and then we can decide to paint a frozen petal right in the middle of the field. Petals or little waters are always interesting objects to cheer up boring parts of your painting, like here. Just a bit of gray and a fan brush will do the work for you. Now, before we go on, let me tell you a bit about Mount Arrowsmith.
In 1853, 3 cartographers explored the mountain. Captain Richards, Aaron Arrowsmith and his nephew, John Arrowsmith. Now, Mount Richards doesn't sound very cool, so they decided it became Mount Arrowsmith. In 1910, the CPR built a tourist chalet at the east end of Cameron Lake, right behind me. In 1912, a pack trail was completed from the lake to an overnight hut at 40,000 feet on the slopes of Mount Coakley. Pretty cold. From there you could go to Mount Arrowsmith summit, and this trail, known as the Old Arrowsmith Trail, is still popular. It's one of the oldest trails on Vancouver Island. For me, as a mud and water hero from Holland, I stay with my feet on the ground.
It was cold there near Lake Cameron. Your teacher had a brain freeze. Of course, I meant 4,000 feet instead of 40,000 feet. Well, mathematics was never my strongest thing. Here is a little clip of Chris Eistas and his friends. They are climbing the hump that we are painting. How cool is that? I think they are pretty brave to climb those steep slopes. And this without a parachute. Oh boy, oh boy. Too steep for me. But the views are rewarding. Look at that. And there's those famous poles on the top. I wonder who placed those poles. And there's Chris Berger waving hello from his airplane, safe and well, showing us the frightening edges of the mountain. You must be really brave to do a walk out there. I love to see it from beneath. With frozen fingers we can paint some real trees in front of the background. And that with a small round brush. I mix some green earth with dark gray and there we go. Make them all uneven. It was, by the way, real fun to watch Chris Eistas with his friends climbing those steep slopes. For me, as a Dutch cheesehead, it's all way too steep. In Holland, we don't have mountains at all, and for me, a household ladder is already too high. No, your teacher will never be a mountain hero, but okay, you cannot have it all. The paint gets a bit muddy, so take my advice and let it dry for a couple of days before you move on. But we have to continue, and let's do a few more. I still use a small round brush, and then it's time to put some snow on the front trees. And suddenly we have a whole different view. I use a snow color, yellow blue, with a little bit of cadmium yellow light, and of course titanium white in different tones. The trees in the front will come loose from the background. And this will make your painting so different. Of course, it's up to you how many trees you want to paint. But here we have to skip a little bit to gain some time, of course. And I start working with a knife again. With a knife and some different tones of phthalo blue, and that is of course dark, middle and light, we can scratch downwards and suddenly the most fantastic things will happen. Let's work a little bit on the paddle or pond. With dark gray, we dive again into the cold ice and make it wet again. Paint a bit of light gray upon it, and we can create some reflections with dark gray, almost black. Next to it, a bit of snow light gray, and then fade it in with a soft, clean filbert brush. Then we will have some fun with a knife. Just shake the knife into the wet paint and see what happens. Nice little scratches will appear. See how much you want to do. It doesn't matter. As you have fun, just go ahead. On the edges of from the frozen water, we can scratch some dark gray. On top of that, a bit more snow color. And then of course it's time for some highlight on the snow. Down below, we can make it a bit darker, just with a dark snow color and some gray. Don't hesitate to make it real dark. It will give the impression that we are looking into the painting. At the end, we can use the knife to make it more rough. Now let's take a little break and I show you our only little mountain in Holland. I told you we had no mountains in Holland. Well, I lied. We have one cute little mountain, the St. Petersberg. It's only 171 meters high, but he is beautiful and right on the border with Belgium, close to Maastricht. Underneath you can make a long walk into the famous Merkel Grotten or Marl Caves. Never go there without a guide. You will get lost and you will never see daylight again. During hundreds of years, People dug labyrinths of corridors into the soft stone, and nobody knows for real how deep it goes into earth, so be advised. A real impressive mountain is the Matterhorn in Switzerland. In this relaxing train clip of Train JJ, we can sit down and enjoy the ride. This strange triangle mountain of 4,478 meters high looks very gentle, but if you want to climb it, be aware. This Mount Arrowsmith is an easy peasy compared to this man-eater. Already 500 climbers lost their lives climbing this steep monster. And this is the village of Zermatt. And this is how I like to climb a mountain, nice and relaxed by train. Even the famous Walt Disney was inspired by this legendary mountain and used it as an example for Disneyland. Yes, I know you want to see more of Europe, but duty calls. If you draw the planks of the fence, take a good care of the perspective. Left in the corner is the vanishing point. If you draw all the lines to that point, you will be safe. With a dark gray and a little touch of burnt sienna, we can paint the planks with a small filbert brush. It can be a bit confusing encountering a western fence like this, so take a good look how it works. It's stapled on square pieces of wood. For me, as an European, it looks very romantic, of course. Don't forget to use the palette stick, it brings your hand at ease. It's all rough wood, so we don't have to be very precise with all the brush strokes. With a bit of yellow ochre and grey, the same as we mixed for the sky, we can scratch the paint into the wet planks. Right away we have a great natural wood effect. Of course, it needs snow. With the same phthalo blue color, we push it up the planks. And let's do a bit under the planks too. What a great natural look. This snow is ready for building a snowman. It looks almost transparent and that's nice. On the other planks we will do the same, and up the upper plank maybe a bit more snow. The snow looks nice, but with a little bit of highlight it looks even better. The sun is shining. I'd like to show you our beautiful lesson studio, the Academy of Music and Art, right in the middle of Parksville, BC. We have a splendid amount of instruments like guitars, ukes and so on, but most of all we teach music and art. And this is my little sweetie Else, busy with one of her designs for the famous Heartfelt creations. It's unbelievable what she can create with just paper. And if you are curious about it, well, she organized workshops in card making and scrapbooking. And these are my wonderful students during our painting lessons. And in the back you can see your teacher jumping around to help every student with amazing techniques. If you want to know more about it, and especially the Dutch masters, I will whisper the secrets in your ear. Let's do one more item in the painting. We will set up a cute little tree right behind the fence on the right side of the painting. With a small round brush we push the dark grey mixed with a bit of green earth into the wet paint. I told you before, if the underlayer is too wet, wait a few days. And it's easier to paint the branches then. Wet and wet is nice, but it may not become too muddy. Like I told you in other episodes, every painting I made for these shows are for sale, and I will donate everything to the Anne Mary Bailey Fund for Sick Kids in BC. If you want to do a bit, you're more than welcome. Thank you so much, we appreciate. In the meantime, I was decorating our little tree with some snow, highlight snow. It's the same technique, just push the halo blue into the wet branches. And then we have a wonderful result. It might be good to think that a tree is round, so don't forget to put some of the snow also in the middle. And it might be fun to make some icicles, treetops. You don't have to do it, but it looks great. In the middle part of the tree, I decided to do some more shadow branches, just to create some more contrast, and I think it looks nice. Upon those branches we can paint some shadow snow, just with a bit of dark gray. As soon as you think the painting is ready, add some highlights just here and there. The effect is fantastic and makes it so much more outstanding. Maybe it's fun to give one of the background trees a bit more light too. Just let it come more forward. Watch this. I take a small round brush and just add a bit of highlight, so here and there. Don't get carried away, don't do them all, otherwise you will spoil the effect. With adding the highlights, I think we completed our painting of Mount Arrowsmith.
Mount Arrowsmith is ready for a good hike, but if you do it, be careful out there. As usual, you will find the whole episode on our website. Thank you for watching and keep on painting.